Hi everyone, and welcome to my presentation. My name is Ashley Birdsall, and today we will be discussing domestic violence in early adulthood. Although domestic violence can occur at any stage in life, most of the victims experience it during their early adulthood stage of life. That is why I chose it for my topic for my presentation today. I want to start off my presentation by discussing Erik Erikson's stages of development. Erikson said that throughout life, we experience 8 stages of development. During each stage of development, we have a crisis or conflict that we need to resolve in order to successfully move on to the next stage of development. On the screen is a picture of the 8 stages of development. Although there are 8 stages, today's presentation will only be focusing on the conflict which occurs during the young adulthood or early adulthood stage of life. The early adulthood stage of life includes individuals from the age of 20 to 40 years old. There's a lot which occurs during this stage of development, although the overall crisis which occurs for all individuals is developing intimate relationships or isolating. During this stage of development, individuals are trying to form intimate relationships with others. This can include intimate partner relationships, including a spouse, as well as developing intimate friendships. By being able to develop these intimate relationships at this stage of life, the individual will be able to have the ability to love and be committed to others, and in turn has successful relationships with others. Although not everyone is able to achieve this crisis at this stage in life and can fall into isolation. When individuals are unable to form strong, intimate relationships with others, they will become lonely and isolate from others around them. There are many factors which individuals may encounter which would affect their likelihood of developing intimate relationships or isolating. One of the main factors individuals need to learn during this stage of life is how to give and take without sacrificing their own identity. Individuals who struggle with this are at a high risk of isolating when they move into adulthood and at their next stage of development. Other factors which can affect an individual's ability to develop intimate relationships at this stage of life includes drug and alcohol abuse, mental health diagnosis, homelessness, lack of previously learned social skills, as well as domestic violence. As you can imagine, all of these factors could lead to the individual being rejected by society and eventually leading to isolation due to that rejection. Individuals who have experiences with combative or competitive relationships during this stage of life also tend to isolate. I'll give you a few seconds to think of reasons why this may be. Some of the reasons why victims of abuse isolate is due to the fear of being rejected by others, embarrassment, the abuser has cut them off from friends, family, supports, as well as they do not have a form of transportation or communication. A lot of times, abusers will blame the victim's friends and families and say how they are troublemakers. They will say negative, untruthful things about the victim's loved ones in order to make the victim no longer trust them. The abuser will also take away any form of communication the victim may have or control with who they're able to talk to. They will only have access to one car, which the abuser will control. Victims will be embarrassed because of their relationships as well as their bruises, leading them to isolate away from others so that their bruises cannot be seen. When they go out into public, they will make excuses for the bruises if questioned because they have a fear of how others will perceive them. Since society does not discuss domestic abuse very often, these women feel alone and as though something that should not be talked about. I just want to give a disclaimer for everyone that some of the videos, images, and situations discussed in the rest of this PowerPoint can be difficult to see and hear. You'll now see a picture of a woman who was abused by her husband or spouse. So what is domestic violence? Merriam-Webster's definition is the inflicting of physical injury by one family or household member on another. a repeated or habitual pattern of such behavior. Domestic violence does not only include physical abuse, like hitting, punching, pushing down the stairs, but also includes sexual abuse, emotional abuse, economic abuse, as well as psychological abuse. Forcing a partner to have unwanted sexual encounters with them is abuse. Yelling and screaming at an individual, which will be seen later in a video during this presentation, is abuse. Controlling the money unwillingly and not allowing your spouse access to money can also be abuse. All of these examples are abuse that will more than likely lead to psychological abuse, including depression, anxiety, PTSD, as well as many other diagnoses. In 2005, Willie Middlebrows of the Denver Broncos grabbed his girlfriend by the hair and attempted to choke her. Twice. He pled guilty to the charges and later that year was traded to the San Francisco 49ers, who said Willie was, and I quote, put in a bad situation and needed a change of scenery. The same year, Samari Rolle of the Tennessee Titans hit his wife so hard across her face that she required stitches over her left eye. A few weeks later, he received a $30 million deal with the Ravens and a fine from the NFL, which included one game's paycheck. A videotape was released of Ray Rice punching his wife and knocking her unconscious in an elevator last year. Initially, the NFL denied the video and said that they had not seen it, although after much time, something was finally done, and Ray Rice was suspended from playing in the NFL. Although since then, this has been reinstated. I'm not trying to say that the NFL is wrong by continuing to allow these individuals to play football, but trying to show you how even when domestic abuse is talked about in society, the victims are not given enough support, while the abusers continue to live their lives without much change. Other celebrities listed on this slide have also been victims of domestic abuse or have witnessed it during their lifetime. Domestic abuse has no limits. It can happen to anyone, anywhere, no matter your economic status. The average age of a victim of abuse is 18 to 24 years old. This is during that early adulthood stage of development. Please read over some of the statistics of domestic abuse. The following is a video clip from the show 2020, coming from the words of the victim.
In a nice neighborhood in upstate New York, in a nice house like the ones you know, behind closed doors, a father commands his 13-year-old son to pick up a camera and start recording.
Look at it, bitch. You play those stupid games with me, I'll knock your teeth out of your face.
The father delivers a verbal flogging to the mother in front of their children.
You act like a in front of the kids.
It will go on for nearly an hour.
You little slut. If I see a dog chewing your ass up, I won't stop. I won't stop.
It is domestic abuse, the kind we hear about but often don't believe.
I don't want to see your stupid ass crooked son. Stupid ass helper.
Susan is 42 years old. They have 3 children. The father, owner, directs his 13-year-old son, the cameraman, to get a close-up of their emotionally battered mother.
Zoom in. Do you see a tear? Nah, not a tear out of that damn face. I got that.
He indicates he wants the tape to prove that his anger at his wife is justified. What prompts his tirade? Susan asks him if he'd like some lunch.
Just come over with this stupid and stir it up. No, you didn't leave. You didn't just come ask me about me.
He even makes his 13-year-old son join him in blaming her.
You enjoy being an asshole because that's how it's just you.
Because you know it's supposed to. You do it anyway.
You do it anyway.
And if you're wondering what kind of woman would endure something like this if you're certain she's nothing like you, well, take a look at Susan on tape 3 years ago and look at the woman she really is today.
What do you see when you look at her? A woman desperately trying to save whatever she can salvage of her family.
desperately trying to please her husband and do whatever it is that he wants her to do.
According to a Department of Justice survey, 1 in 4 American women experience domestic violence. For Susan, the story begins when she is 18 years old, the daughter of a black father, a white mother, who falls in love with a 26-year-old guitarist in a popular local band. He is talented, charismatic. His name is Ulner.
I would go to see him play on the weekends, and we'd talk on the phone, and we just sort of grew to know each other.
Did you say to yourself, I'm happy?
Absolutely.
They got married. He worked as a musician, she with a health insurance company, and they had their 3 children. We're covering their faces at her request.
Everyone looks at you, and I know the first thing they would think is, so beautiful, so intelligent. You must have been able to take care of yourself in any situation.
I was shy. I was very green. You know, my world was absolutely inside of the walls of our home.
She says at first her husband was just very demanding and controlling, not so different from her own father, whom she described as overbearing. But she says the more she tried to comply with her husband's demands, the more obsessive his control.
Did you have friends over for dinner?
Never. He never wanted friends over. He never wanted men in his house in particular.
And your father and stepfather didn't know about this?
My husband had cut me off from my father and family for many years.
How you gonna say something stupid like that?
And you can hear on the videotape how his badgering, his criticism wore her down by twisting her words.
When I was watching my son do something, and he said, don't look at him like you're interested in what he's doing. And I said, I think I am interested in what my children do.
I think I'm interested in my children.
And he turned that into, I think I'm interested in what my children do.
So you can think you care about your children, whatever you want to think you care about. You don't.
And then he turned it into, I think I love my children. All in the same conversation. That phrase turned into something totally different.
Stupid ass.
In that 51-minute tape, Ulner calls Susan stupid 36 times.
And just you standing there talking stupid like that pisses me off. Because she should be on your knees apologizing, you stupid ass.
The rants.
Yes. The mental and verbal abuse, just hours. I mean, he would call it a family meeting. And these family meetings were all about what mommy did wrong today. He totally had my children completely on his side, completely brainwashed. Not only could I not believe his behavior, but I couldn't believe my own children's behavior.
She says the verbal abuse had gone on for years before the words became fists. She says the first time he hit her, it was because she forgot something he wanted at a nearby grocery store. Her oldest child, her daughter, was 19.
He beat me down to the floor. I was crawling on the floor trying to get away. I remember my daughter turning on the vacuum cleaner so that my younger children couldn't hear it.
You know more what's going on at work than in your own house.
At the time of the tape, she was working, he was not. He was jealous of men on the outside.
And this got to do with somebody at work.
I can't tell you how many baseball coaches I was accused of, swimming teachers, karate teacher, other parents, anything.
Video this line ass up.
But her greatest agony was the role of her children.
When you think your son was on the other side of that lens.
Not only that, my younger son was right there also.
He was in the room.
Their youngest son, 8 years old.
Sit so stupid ass.
June 22, 2003, terrifying images of physical abuse. The kind the experts say takes place every 15 seconds someplace in this country. The difference is, this is caught on video.
You don't know what to do. Look at your stupid ass. Look at the way you look.
Behind the camera, a 13-year-old boy watching his mother slapped, slugged, and throttled by his father.
You keep playing f***ing games, man. Knock your head off that wall.
At one point, for nearly 3 minutes, the son seems unable to record what the father is doing. He keeps the lens facing away toward his own feet.
You follow what I say to the T.
The terrified mother, Susan, covers her face while the father, Ulmer, strangles her, throws her to the floor.
You have a stupid ass nerve about your stupid ass self. If you don't learn that, you
When you look back, are you amazed you didn't crack in some other way?
Absolutely. The only thing that kept me from cracking was the thought of my children.
Why didn't you leave?
A lot of it is preservation of family. I didn't want to see my family destroyed. And in my eyes, because of what he was telling me, I was the problem. So all I had to do was fix me.
On average, it will take 7 tries for a woman to leave her abuser. The psychological chains as strong as any metal.
He had literally, physically, and mentally beat me down to nothing. I thought I was not as good as a piece of dirt on his shoe. And that's a place that is hard to come out of.
I remember saying to her, it's got to stop. It ends here.
I looked at her and I said, today is the day. Once I said to Lynn, that was it, she said, okay, I'm calling. And went and did it immediately.
With the help of police over the next few hours, she ran a heart-pounding race against the clock. Since her husband patrolled every minute of her day, she had to get to the children before he did, and before he made an irrational move. Officer Kathy Onions.
We decided to have Susan call the residents and speak to her husband to reassure him that she picked up the sign as she was instructed to. We wanted to document what his response was to this conversation and, have it on a tape.
Hello.
Where are you?
I'm afraid to come home. I'm afraid to come home.
You stupid ass up. What you mean you're afraid to come home? You better bring my son home. If you don't bring my son home, I'm going to kill you, Ella.
I don't want you to hurt me. I'm afraid to come home.
In the end, Ulmer is found guilty on all counts. The judge, who will never forget that searing tape, hands down a sentence of 36 years.
The videotape is it's terrible. And as you can see, it's still gets to me.
According to the prosecutor, the sentence would be the longest in New York history for a domestic violence case in which the victim managed to stay alive.
People say you get murder convictions that don't have that kind of sentence.
What the judge said at sentencing was, you have destroyed this family as much, if not more, than if you had committed a murder.
It was an unusual case and it required some unusual punishment.
Domestic abuse has several effects on the victims, as you saw in the video. 56% are diagnosed with a psychiatric disorder. 37% of abused women have some sort of symptoms of depression. 29% of women who attempt suicide were abused women. Many of the victims of domestic abuse do not report to the police, although about 55% report the abuse. Many of them also do not receive assistance from a service agency. In 2013 until 2012, only 24% of victims received agency support for domestic abuse. This support includes shelters, safety plans, therapy, and so forth. The victim and the abuser tend to develop a dependency or traumatic bond with each other, which leads to a cycle of abusive behavior. This bond makes it difficult for the victim to leave the abuser. Surprisingly enough, only a small percentage of victims, approximately 12%, have a sense of hatred for the abuser. The rest of the victims feel a sense of disloyalty if they were to leave the abuser. The victims also do not feel as though they have control over the abuse and will blame themselves for the abuse. Please watch this short video on a billboard display in the United Kingdom to help bring awareness to domestic abuse.
With this advert, when people notice this woman, they notice her injuries, those injuries start to disappear. So it's an incredibly powerful way to show everybody that together, if we are prepared to see and hear about domestic violence and not let it be a taboo, we can end it together.
So we hooked up with Women's Aid, who we've done a lot of work with before, to come up with a really simple idea. So if you walk past one of these posters, look at it and actually pay attention to it. How can we sort of just really drive that on an emotional level? Very simple. You walk past, it recognises you. It takes no data from you, but it just adds you to a progress chart. And the more people who look at it, then it changes the lady's expression, and the bruises disappear. And she says thank you at the end. So it's very, very simple. Underneath it, it's actually quite complicated, but the technology is invisible, and that's how we want it to be.
Domestic violence is still a real taboo in our society. When women come forward, they're not listened to, they're not believed, they're not heard. When you're a victim of a crime, you expect to be heard, you expect to be believed by your friends, by your colleagues, and most of all by professionals who are supposed to do something about it. I think people are quite shocked when they see the image of the woman, but then domestic violence is shocking. We must remember that 2 women a week on average are killed in England and Wales by a partner or former partner. It is a really shocking issue. So I think initially people are shocked, but I think the end message is really positive, that we can end domestic violence, that we mustn't let it be a taboo, we must face up to those facts in our society. So I think that's a really strong and powerful message that comes through really clearly in the advert.
From my personal experience, I've stood underneath this thing, looking at people's faces, and everybody's looking up at it. So it's really, the image is really powerful anyway. But when they see themselves actually interacting with it, you can just see they're making that connection between they're looking at it and they're making it happen. So I think that's where the technology is going and the industry is going, is how can you make things relevant and personal. And you think, I'm actually making a difference, well, I'm just somebody walking past an ad.
So we hope that this ad will touch thousands of people and make them aware of what's happening, and to make them more sensitive to people that they might know, who might be victims of domestic violence or indeed might be perpetrators.
Many victims have said that if they were asked about the abuse, they would have come forward about it and talked about it, although no one asked them, so they held it in. Why is it so hard for society to see black and blue? When it comes to the role of the social worker in regards to domestic abuse, it is important that you are educated about it. Throughout this presentation, I wanted to make sure to help in educating you about domestic abuse so that you are more knowledgeable about the fact that there is a problem. Many victims have said that if their therapist was more aware of domestic abuse, it would be easier for them to report. Don't judge them. Be open and listen to what they are saying. By doing this, it's showing the victim that it's okay and that you're there for support. Ask them questions and be encouraging. It's also important to make sure that you are ensuring their personal safety. In order to make sure we are ensuring the safety of the victim, we have to help them in developing a safety plan. They may need several safety plans depending on the abuse and their future plan. It is important to never pressure the victim into leaving if they are not ready. In doing this, it will push the victim back and have them isolate more. You'll see the link on the bottom of this page that can be used as a reference in helping and building safety plans for victims of abuse. On this screen is a list of some of the nationwide programs and resources for victims of abuse for your reference. There are many domestic violence intervention programs nationally to help victims of abuse. Each state has programs which are funded by the state and include emergency shelter, counseling, referrals for resources, advocacy, as well as traditional housing for the victim. Although the funding is there, the amount of funding is not enough. As social workers, we need to be the voice for the victims and help them by getting more funding for services. Every year, approximately 5,200 women are turned down because of a lack of funding. Together, we need to work to help prevent domestic abuse. The next 3 slides will include references that I used in development of this PowerPoint. Thank you for your time today.